Happy Monday. This week, I want to talk about an idea that I've kind of been pondering over the last 4 to 6 months, and it's one of those things, again, that just keeps coming up in the content that I choose to watch and I choose to consume, which is largely fitness influencers or other people in my life who think like me and live similar lives like me. A lot of them are also post-college athletes or people who are sort of self-proclaiming themselves as an adult athlete. Or there are also just some people who are pursuing their careers with the same sort of drive that I have always had. And this common idea that keeps coming up is that there is a breed of us or a certain subsector of us, young people and old people alike, who have always had discipline and never had to work for it. And I think sometimes that makes it hard for us to relate to people who are struggling to get started on their fitness journey, struggling to be healthy, or just struggling to have the willpower to do things in life. I constantly hear people say, I wish I could work out like you, or I wish I could get as many steps as you, or I wish I liked eating healthy food. And to me, that's really hard to not just be like, then just do it. And I know it's more than that, but to me, it's something I have just always done. And in my last 6 months or so, I've had to take a step back from some of my own discipline and some of my own habits. And that's what I want to talk about today. And just a disclaimer, this is an idea and some concepts that when I share them, people often go, oh, well, maybe Morgan needs help. Oh, well, maybe Morgan's really sad. And that's not at all what I'm communicating. These ideas that happen in my head, they often don't have emotion attached to them. They're just ideas. I like to label things. I like to make mnemonic devices and construct 3-page essays about all of my ideas. And so it's never something that I'm like bringing up as if I haven't already handled it, kind of. It's actually better for me to do it in this sort of format because it means that I have made it something tangible. And when I have something tangible, when I have a word to label something, it allows me to almost separate myself from it, analyze it like a scientist, not as much like a judge. So when I share this and when I walk through some of these ideas, I hope that you can relate to them. If you can't relate to the having too much discipline, I think you can relate to some of the other concepts that I'll walk through, this progression that I've been going through. And yeah, I just hope you take something out of this, or if nothing else, you understand your highly disciplined friends like me and like your other people in your life that maybe it's just been strange to you how they're able to just always be go, go, go and never struggle with motivation or discipline. So let's dive in. So as I've sort of already covered a little bit, my backstory is that I've always been an athlete, never like exceptional, but average, maybe slightly above average, just a pretty athletic person. That's a blessing of mine. My discipline began sort of through sports, also through just being raised in the church. I think you naturally get some innate, whether you hate it or not, I think that stricter religion that we all grow up in is actually better than if we had no rules. So that's another topic. But my point being, growing up in a Christian home, I had a decent amount of structure to sort of abide by early on. And so discipline is kind of just always been there though. So it kind of all became a little bit of an unhealthy relationship with discipline, specifically around food, when I became a vegetarian for about 5 years, which all in all doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it does just mean you're missing things. You're missing nutrients, you're missing protein, you're just behind on a lot of things. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but for what I was wanting to do performance-wise, it was a bad thing. So the discipline kind of built over that period of eating, trying to eat super healthy with this sort of like orthorexic mind of like unhealthy things are never allowed. It even goes deeper than my health and fitness. So discipline even existed in school. I never not did an assignment, even though I definitely had the grades to skip a few things. I also never not did an assignment to an A plus ability, and if you gave me an A minus, I was probably pissed about it. So that's, even the discipline just always sort of felt like a part of me. It never was something I had to like learn. It was just a part of me, and that's a blessing. I get that. So discipline and consistency, which I think consistency sort of piggybacks off of discipline, or discipline goes with consistency. Usually I think those two go together in a person, and they've just always been there. People used to say, you're really tough, but I don't think I was tough. I think I just had this inkling to, or maybe I learned it, however it happened. I really love to do the things that other people avoid. So when I look at the things I love in this life, they're usually things that other people hate. I became an accountant. I love to run. I love to like sit in the sauna and like challenge I'm not leaving until 3 more people come in and leave in the time that I'm in here. Like, it's just stuff like that. Like, one of my friends this last week said, you love to torture yourself every day. I'm like, I don't know if I think of it as torturing myself, because they are just the things I love to do. But yes, a lot of the things, I always try to add something challenging to everything, and maybe that's not healthy, and that's obviously why I'm writing this episode, but I think what it does is that when something bad actually happens, I'm kind of unfazed by it, and I think that's okay. I think that's good, because if I make every normal day a little bit harder than it needs to be, then every hard day feels easier than it should. I don't know. That's how I kind of structure my life. You can take it, leave it, think I'm crazy, whatever it be. So that's my backstory. Discipline is good when you have some harmful habits to fix. So in the beginning, my discipline was positive. It was doing good things. And so this discipline to fix some of those bad things, specifically, I kind of went into the next era. So that's sort of the upbringing of my discipline. And this next kind of era of my life started after the vegetarian phase. And it was sort of like the discipline to fix the unhealthy food habits, fix the unhealthy body, and get healthy again. And as I started to do that, I became what Chris Williamson calls, and what many people will call, like a self-improvement junkie. So I started reading every book and listening to every podcast and talking to every person who's on the other side of an eating disorder, of something else. And I started just consuming and learning and finding every foolproof mnemonic device, system, habit that I could do to get better. And also not a bad thing originally. It helped me learn the mindfulness hacks. It helped me learn the science for why I was thinking. And basically everything I talk about on this podcast is a result of me falling in love with that self-improvement mindset. I started reading so many books, and I never read beforehand. So even out of this self-improvement junkie stage, I gained so much. And I'm kind of still there. I will always be a self-improvement junkie, which is the beautiful thing about science and about this world, is that we're constantly learning new things. And then we're also constantly learning new things that are wrong, and you have to discern. It's an endless puzzle for your brain, and I love that part of it. But this self-improvement junkie stage became unhealthy as well. So the same way my discipline was good and became kind of unhealthy, my self-improvement junkie was good and became unhealthy. And Chris Williamson, again, one of my favorite podcasts, the Modern Wisdom podcast, he does this kind of deep dive into some ideas. And some of the things that I've always felt I've never been able to articulate until I started hearing him do it. And it's just fun. So he calls this the self-improvement kind of addict stage. And so what he says in this self-improvement junkie paragraph is, self-improvement isn't distributed like medicine. It distributes like alcohol. Those that should abstain or resist it are drunk of it. And those that need to drink to the bottom of the bottle won't loosen up or even take a sip. He says that achievement is today's alcohol. But I think that for some of us, achievement implies that we want external reward, external support. And for me, it's never been a desire to have other people compliment me, to have other people noticing what I'm doing or being I never needed the other person to say, you are tough, you are disciplined. That's not it. For me, the only person that needed to have their expectations met was myself. And so I wouldn't say achievement is my alcohol. I would say just, I don't know if you call it growth or if you just call it meeting the expectation, because that's never going to happen either. That's the dilemma of this. That's why we're a self-improvement junkie. But I think that idea is really interesting because self-improvement is meant, self-help books, self-help podcasts, even therapy is meant for people who need it. But I think a lot of times the people going to these things, the people drinking the quote unquote bottle to the bottom of self-help, are the people who already they don't have it all figured out, but we're the ones who are already even more self-aware than we need to be, which is just interesting. I think we're still benefiting from the self-improvement, but you'll notice people rarely have one self-help habit. They usually have a bunch, which means that they are a person who's very well educated on self-help. And so like me, like my entire day feels like self-help strategies that I've learned. And again, they're all good things, but it got to the point where I was needing to do all of these things to even have a good day. And then I was still trying to add on more and more and more. And then you get to the problem of the self-help books start disagreeing. And now what do you do? Because they're both labeled self-help, but one of them is saying that the other one is wrong. And that's sort of just the spiral that I got to. I became obsessed with closing the gap between who I was and who I wanted to be. I wanted to solve the unsatisfaction to the best of my ability so that Morgan was better able to love others and use my talents to serve others. And so now we've got kind of an unhealthy relationship with discipline, kind of an unhealthy relationship with self-help, but sort of a healthy vision behind it, which is that I wanted to be better for others. Again, I wasn't seeking internal or external support necessarily. I was just trying to serve people better, to do better with the means that God gave me. So all of that kind of builds into this era of where I've been within the last 6 to 8 months of just realizing that I could do less and gain more. And this is where I'm calling it friend zoning my discipline. And let's dive in. So mainly, I broke my leg and I went to Thailand, and I felt like my life was kind of falling apart, which I get it. I broke my fibula. I know I say that out loud like my life is falling apart, and internally I know how stupid that sounds. Trust me. But I felt like my life was falling apart. And so I'm sitting in like Thailand and I'm eating food that I can't track the macros of. I'm not getting 10,000 steps a day because my leg is broken and nobody else knew it, but it did hurt. I just didn't say it hurt. And I was like, I'm gonna get fat, I'm gonna get slow, I'm never gonna run again. So like all of these habits that I had built up for 5-6 years, eating healthy, working out every day, reading, even like praying and doing all these things, I had built up this perfect strategic self-help disciplined plan in a day. And now I was doing none of it. Literally, I went from 100 to 0. And I'm sitting in a foreign country doing 0% of my regularity. And yet, and this is going to sound surface level, and yet my body felt healthier and looked healthier, besides the black ankle, looked healthier than ever before. I was less bloated. I was less stressed. My skin was healthier. My hair was healthier. And for that 10-day period of me being able to not do any of my self-help strategies or any of my disciplined things, I felt and looked better. And so now I'm asking, what is the discipline and the grinding for? Could I really just do this because I love it? Not because I have to stay skinny. Not because I have to because I want to stay muscular. Not because I have to because I want to keep running marathons. Could I just do these things for fun? And it sounds like such a wild question, but I'm like sitting in a foreign country going, This is why they call it recreational, because you don't have to. And to take a quick aside here, I think a lot of this was due to the disciplined periods and to the self-help period of building that up. So it's like muscle memory. Your body, if you take the time to put in hours in the gym, put in learning for school, put in getting healthy and building that healthy eating pyramid, that is like muscle memory, so that when you have a period like I did in Thailand where you can't do any of it, your body is going to be okay because it knows that it's going to go back. So what I don't want you to think is that I had this time where I'm like, oh, well, now I can just go off the rails. I don't have to do anything. That would have resulted in unhealthy on the other side of the spectrum. What I realized is that I was doing too much. And it's going to sound dumb because you'll be like, well, duh. But to people like me, to people like us maybe, it never feels like you're doing too much. It always feels like you're doing too little. And so this realization that I could do less was like light bulb. It was insane how I now could be like, so when I go back, I don't have to run 10 miles every day. I can do like 5. And you're going to go, that's still dumb. But that's where my brain was. I was like, I could go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week and I don't need to PR. I can just move. And so that was the beautiful thing that I realized, is then I started friend zoning my discipline. And why do I say friend zoning? Because I originally had this idea of like AA for self-improvement junkie or AA for the discipline junkie. And I don't want to sound insensitive because I know that AA is a very real thing. But AA is sort of saying like you're addicted to discipline. You're addicted to self-improvement. And most of the addictions that go through like AA support groups, they're bad and they're leaving behind a bad thing. And the goal is that you never go back. So when you become sober on something, the goal is that you don't go back to it, because if you go back to it, it starts to spiral again. Discipline and self-improvement are not something you can become fully sober of. Because if you do that, you're going to be on the other end of the spectrum. If you become sober of all discipline, you're never going to go to the gym. You're never going to eat healthy. You're just going to go off the rails. You're never going to read a book. You're never going to go out with friends. You're going to become, I think of the WALL-E, like the WALL-E movie where these people are in space or whatever and they have to have the wheelchair. That's what I picture you become if you become sober of discipline. If you become sober of self-help, you never get any better. You never read a book that helps you learn a new thing. You never even question, could I grow from this? And so why I can't call this like AA for discipline junkies is because we can't become fully sober of our discipline. But we can break up with it a little bit. Hence the friend zoning. So like in a breakup, discipline was someone I still needed to spend my life with. I still wanted to spend my life with, but the relationship was so toxic that I had to leave, even though everything would actually seem to get worse from the outside. So this is another reason I thought the friend zoning or the breakup strategy or naming was good, because when you break up with somebody, life immediately seems to go downhill. Like, you had a boyfriend, now you don't. You used to hang out with your girlfriend every night. Now your nights are lonely and in the dark, playing video games, whatever it be. Same thing with discipline and self-help. So when you first kind of give up a little bit of this discipline, you have a donut, which I don't like donuts, so that's a bad example. Maybe you have, I do like Reese's. Maybe I have a piece of Reese's, which I can't even say anymore because I don't even eat Reese's anymore, but maybe I have a Reese's. Or maybe I drink lemonade instead of just water. What it looks like to the external world is that I'm getting worse. You know, like, I used to drink water, now I'm drinking lemonade. I used to never have candy, now I'm able to eat a piece of candy. Everything looks like it's going backwards, just like in a breakup. I used to work out every day, now I'm not going to the gym every day. Like, that one person who sees me every day goes, oh, she fell off. no, I'm just taking a rest day. And so, and maybe nobody else, this is where maybe it is a little bit of the external, because if I knew that nobody else was thinking that, it wouldn't kind of create this inner turmoil. So maybe I should work through that a little bit. Beside the point, the whole point is that when you give up some of your discipline, everything looks like it's going backwards. It looks like you're regressing, when actually, for those of us who are addicted to discipline, and we have too much discipline, too much self-help, we are actually progressing. So, when you break up with somebody, your weekends are now less exciting, your Netflix is gone because you were freeloading on their subscription, and you don't get to pet their dog anymore, which is perhaps the saddest part about a breakup. But whatever it be, it seems like you lose more than you gain. However, this is why I use the friend zoning, because an addiction to discipline and exercise health is praised by others and something that you can't give up entirely. Just like a solid relationship with someone you may still enjoy aspects of. I needed to still have discipline in my life, but I couldn't be so close to them. Essentially, I divorced discipline in an effort to friend zone it. And the relationship is still awkward, just like in a breakup or just like in a divorce. But you can learn to enjoy each other again. And I think that's where I'm at right now, is that for a while there, I was doing this dance between like, I'm too disciplined, I'm going to give up some discipline, now I hate myself because I ate a piece of candy. But giving it time and reflecting and journaling and thinking about it and writing a 45-minute podcast episode about it, now I'm at the point where it's still a little awkward. Every time you see that X, it'll always be a little awkward. But you can learn to enjoy each other again. You can learn to say hi in public at the grocery store and be okay. And when you learn to live in that awkwardness, you're no longer torturing each other. You're just being amicable. And I think that's where you get. So that's sort of where I'm at, is a much healthier relationship with doing a little bit less, but knowing that I'm still actually probably getting more because my body is a little bit more recovered at this point. And this next little piece that I want to throw in here is again a Chris Williamson episode, and it's just a beautiful description of what I think a lot of people feel. And even if you didn't relate to the discipline part of this episode, I think if you're listening to this, odds are you're somewhat growth-minded and you'll relate to this part. So Chris Williamson, this is an idea I felt so deeply in probably between college and this last year. And I felt this so much, but I could never express it. And I think so many people heard him say this, and they finally felt so understood. So Chris Williamson talks about the lonely chapter. And here's what he says. You go from who you are to who you want to be. You become so developed that you outgrew your old friends, but haven't developed enough to fit in with your new friends. The other side of this lonely chapter. You are a different character to each person who knows you because their impression of you are the bare bones of what they've seen fleshed out by their own knowledge of themselves. So what he's saying there is that you hit this period where you've done the self-help, you've done the work to be a better version of yourself, and so you're stuck in this gap of like, you're not too good for your old friends. That's not what I'm saying. But like, they just don't get you anymore because they only see the old version of you. But your new friends are like still a step ahead, and they haven't really learned to understand the new you either. So when you're in this period of growing, since it's not like a one day you're old Morgan, one day you're new Morgan, there's a period in between where nobody kind of knows who you are. And that's where I felt for like probably a solid year of my life. Like, I was becoming a better person, but I wasn't there yet. And so old people didn't understand me and new people didn't understand me. And honestly, I didn't understand myself. And that's sort of what he talks about. And the hardest part of this is he says then that old people will keep handing you your old costume because we don't like to not understand things as humans. And so those old friends who are still around you will keep handing you the old version of you because they want to be able to understand you. To give an example, I was a person who used to just sit in the corner and not talk to people. And so then when I started going to family gatherings or things with friends or coffee with just random people would kind of do a double take. Like, is Morgan actually talking? Like, or if I said something and I just asked a question, like, if I ask somebody what kind of cereal you are, like, people still look at me like, why the heck do you care? Like, what is she gonna do with this? I'm like, I'm not collecting intel. Like, I'm not like an undercover spy. That's just who I am now. I just want to know things. And so for a while there, you deal with the temptation to go back to who you once were, because that's what only people understand. But if you can get through this lonely chapter, if you can sit in the discomfort of nobody understands that I'm trying to give up some of my discipline right now, or whatever it be for you, maybe you need to eat healthier, but every time you go to a family gathering, they say things like, oh, well, you're just trying to be better than all of us, like, just have a piece of cake. Or if you're going to the gym every day and people keep kind of saying like, well, you don't have to go, you can come hang out with us on Friday nights. Whatever it be, whatever you're trying to outgrow, don't let old people in your life keep handing you back the old costume. Pick up the new costume and break out of the prison that they keep locking you into. And go listen to Chris Williamson, because he constantly uses that idea, because I think the people who listen to him relate to it so much that it's just like, we get so fired up about it. Just to finish off that thought, he says, your transformation destabilizes the representation that the people around you are attached to, so they try to nudge you back into a familiar role that they know. Charles Horden Cooley calls this the looking glass self. We come to know ourselves as seeing our own reflection in other people's eyes. If these mirrors keep reflecting to the old you, it's hard to step into the new one. Self-verification theory says that people want confirmation and interaction about what they feel about you and themselves. And if you disrupt this script, you introduce friction, share the context, the meaning, and you should get the support rather than friction. So what he's finishing there is that if you really want to grow, that next time that person says, just have a piece of cake, you say, actually, this is why I'm changing. And if you can tell people, if you can have a greater understanding of why you want to go on a diet, why you want to go to the gym, why you need to not go to the gym every day, why you need to not eat healthy all the time. If you can tell people and get that accountability partner, they'll come along. They'll stop trying to hand you your old costume, because nobody is intentionally out here. I shouldn't say nobody, but I believe that most people are not intentionally trying to hurt you. And so if you tell that person, you say, I'm trying to be better. Can you stop giving me my old self? I'm hoping they will stop. That's my encouragement there. So we went from unhealthy discipline to unhealthy self-help to kind of this lonely chapter of like, we're finally getting it, but we don't feel understood by anybody. And then you get to come out of the lonely chapter. This meant finding people, and people who think like me, but also live like me. And so I started, again, this podcast came out of me learning to love people again. So I started going to things with people, and I realized that there are people who have the similar brain that I have, and that just fires you up to be more of yourself. When you find people who encourage you to be you, man, you are unstoppable. I truly believe that. So I started going to run clubs and being with people who eat healthy but don't track every macro. People who, and also coaching. Like, another big part of this coming out of the self-help discipline addiction was coaching others. And when you're coaching others or talking about it on a podcast, you kind of have to practice what you preach. So if I say things like, you don't need to go to the gym 8 days out of the week, I probably shouldn't go to the gym 8 days out of the week. And this is where you're kind of faced with two choices. And this is for everybody, even if you've never had discipline and you're sort of trying to create it within yourself. The goal is to get where your discipline is no longer trauma attached. So what do I mean by that? The thing that got you started on your self-help journey, the thing that got you going on becoming a healthier person, it was honestly probably trauma related. Like, most people don't roll out of bed with 6-pack abs and say, man, I'm going to go get fit today. That's not what happens. What happens is they wake up, they've got a couple extra pounds, and they're like, now I'm going to go eat healthy, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go for a walk every day, whatever it be. There's something trauma related that is causing you to increase your discipline. And the goal is to get to a point where the discipline doesn't need the input of trauma. So for me, there were things like I was insecure, so now I'm going to use that insecurity to fuel my discipline. Maybe you're overweight and that's your fuel to get back in a healthy weight. Maybe you want to run a marathon and that's the fuel that made you become a runner. Whatever it be, you no longer need that fire. Like, hopefully, if you stick to your plan, you become that person who is no longer overweight. You become that person who is no longer insecure. You become that person who just eats healthy now. And now you're faced with the question of, like, the old fuel doesn't work the same anymore. But you can't give up discipline. So even though you don't need to be angry, sad, or torturing yourself to do the work, you still need to do some work. We're called to do some work. And so when that discipline is no longer requiring the input of trauma or anger or sadness, whatever the emotion be, then you get to that point where you're sitting in Thailand and you go, can I just do this for fun? Like, is that possible? And you have to choose, because you can do two things. There's two things you can do here. You can either stop being disciplined and go off the rails, or you can start creating new chaos to try to kind of fuel that. And chaos is a word that has a negative connotation, but honestly, it doesn't have to. Chaos is just giving your brain problems to solve. And so what I'm arguing here is, don't try to add more trauma to fuel your discipline. Just find new things to solve. Find new chaos to solve. You don't want to start self-sabotaging and just creating more trauma so that you have an endless source of fuel. That's where the idea of this unsatisfied came from, is that I felt like I was kind of creating trauma in my life. I read a book, The Mountain Is You by Wiest, and she talks about it being self-sabotage. And so once you get to that point where you're like, I don't need to be sad or angry or do these things to be disciplined, I did sort of start increasing my trauma, just self-creating trauma so that I had some kind of fuel. But coming out of the healthier side of that, I realized that you don't need to self-create trauma. You can just give yourself some healthier challenges every day to help fuel that discipline. But also, just if you truly are a person who is disciplined, you don't need the willpower to lock in. It's just who you are. And I think that's the beautiful stage I'm in now. So if you are a person struggling with your relationship with discipline, maybe they're a bad boyfriend, whatever it be, here's my breakup protocol for discipline. And this is what I did. You have to clean up your Instagram. So when somebody breaks up, the first thing they do is they delete all their social media, they change their status, whatever it be. This is so that you remember the bad, not the good. So when you're a person who's always been disciplined, remember, everything you do going forward is going to look like you're regressing. And so, but you have to only remember, when you look back, only remember the bad. Don't remember the good. Because the good was, I did have a 6-pack at one point. The good was, I was the smallest I ever had been. Was that good? No, but it looked good from the outside. The good was, I was getting more sleep because I was so exhausted from not eating enough every day. Whatever it be, those good things will tempt me to go back. But if I remember the bad things, I would never go back. So the bad things, I was the grumpiest person ever during that stage of my life. Everybody probably hated me, which I love them for not telling me because they should have. I might have changed. But anyway, the bad is that my body was working against me even though it looked okay. And so internally, I had such a struggle with autoimmune disorder, whatever it be, but externally I looked good. So that's the bad So when you're going to reflect on your poor relationship with discipline or your poor relationship with a person, it's going to be impossible to forget the good. So you have to keep reminding yourself of the bad. So delete the Instagram pictures that show you your vacation spot with that ex, and instead only remember the time they didn't take the trash out, whatever it be. That's beside that number one protocol. Number two, what you're going to do is don't text back. And this is what you should also do. When you break up with somebody, oftentimes there's a few like lingering texts that come through. Don't text back. Because this is not a problem to solve, but to understand. So again, I'm not saying I've solved my unhealthy relationship with discipline, but I understand it enough to have formed a 45-minute episode about it. So the goal of this is becoming the person you want to be is not a problem you solve, but a problem you understand. It's a problem you live. And that's more fun. When you're living out a problem, it's an experiment, not a therapy or a diagnosis of it. It's a unique puzzle, and the Morganness is a problem I can only live. Insert your name here. It's a problem that you only get to live. So live it well. Number 3 is be single for a while. So a lot of people will get out of a relationship and they go right back into a new relationship. This is only changing the old version of the fuel. It's only putting the same fuel in a car. You're only going back to the same poor habits, just in a different person or in a different thing. So what I recommend is in this step of be single for a while is find a new fuel to lead you. For those of us who are always consistent, we sort of start to exist in the climax of things. The highest stress, highest comfort, the highest stress, highest effort zone of the climb. Think of it as like 3/4 up a mountain. When you're a person who's that disciplined, you're always like at that 3/4 part of the mountain, the part where it's the steepest, the hardest, and you're just living there. I think that if you pick a completely new mountain and you restart the climb, you'll feel progress again and you'll start to have fun again because it'll be challenging in a new way. The climb is easier at the beginning or in the middle than it is at its peak. So the noob gains are real. Like that person who goes to the gym for the first time, they're going to put on biceps real fast rather than the person who has been doing curls for 40 years. So pick something new. This is just fun. If in a relationship aspect, the be single part is relating to the fact that you shouldn't just get in another relationship. You should learn to know yourself before you do that first. And lastly, this is me just leaving a note here because as I start talking about this problem I have with discipline, I know that there are people out there who are going, yeah, well, that's dumb because I can't make myself go on a 5-minute walk. So the last thing is, if you are a person who is having to break up with discipline or leave them behind a little bit, be thankful that discipline is your addiction because so many people want to get healthier and they just can't muster up the willpower. And so when discipline is more your identity than it is willpower, that's a blessing. And I do know that. Being a person who doesn't have to fight or force themselves because discipline and hard work are simply who you are, simply an expression of yourself, that's a blessing. And if you are a person who needs more discipline in your life, just like I said in the Young Blood Old Souls episode, maybe you should use the strategy of parabiosis and attach yourself to somebody like me or somebody you know who struggles with too much discipline, and I bet that balance will work mutually beneficially for both of you. Episodes like this just make me really excited for the day when Jesus returns, and I don't care to self-diagnose my high performer disorder in a 45-minute audio journal, but just get to enjoy life. I was listening to another Chris Williamson podcast this week with Joe Santiago, and he said, what advice do you have for the person who is the lucky one, who can do a job or anything and be happy? And that just made me smile, because I do feel like I'm a lucky one that can just do or be anything and be happy. And that is a blessing from God. I hope that you can get to a point in your life where you relate to that, or if not, you can better understand the people in your life who that is true for and love them a little better. So that's all I got for you today. Starve the lies, build your body, fortify your mind, stay hungry, and basically this entire episode is about staying unsatisfied with yourself. Have a great week, guys. See you next time.